You're listening to The Pivot Point, where we unpack the defining moments that shift careers and lives. I'm your host, Laura Dionisio, founder of Lead Intact, and my mission is to spotlight the raw, real stories behind career pivots, the fears, the hopes, the messy middles, and the bold decisions that follow. If you're feeling stuck or quietly wondering what's next, I hope these stories help you see yourself a little more clearly and inspire you to start moving toward your own dream life. Let's begin. Freedom isn't just for those who have quit their job and have decided to work for themselves. Freedom is actually a state of mind. It's a choice in how you want your experience to be. Now, yes, I just left corporate as of this recording 4 weeks ago now. So you may be thinking, of course, it's easy for you to say that, Laura, you just quit your job. Actually, I have felt this way even before. Although leaving corporate has definitely taught me a lot more about what freedom means. And I just wanted to share these 4 lessons I've learned so far post-corporate. It's something that I believe you can implement no matter what your job situation is, even if you are in between jobs at the moment. So the first one is this. When I first quit my job, I was just like so excited. I was like, thank God, no more meetings. I can do anything I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, however I want, type of thing. And I got to tell you, the first, let's say 2 weeks post corporate, I did exactly that. I said, fuck the calendar. I ain't even looking. I'm going to wake up when I want. I'm going to go to the gym when I want, eat when I want, work when I want, because I wasn't just there for vacation, right? Like I still had my business to attend to, but I was just like, no, I'm not going to have any rules at all because I am just so tired and I just felt so stifled. I should have felt free, right? I was completely free. There was nothing on my calendar. Nobody was expecting me to do anything. There weren't people pinging me on my phone or IMing me or, that dreaded Teams like call that comes up. Nothing. I should have felt free, right? Should have felt amazing. And yes, it felt nice at first. Maybe for like the first 4 or 5 days. I felt like I was on vacation. But here's what I noticed. I wasn't on vacation. I still had things I needed to do. And what I noticed is that I actually felt more rushed. I actually felt less supported in my day. I felt like I didn't have enough time, which is weird because all I had was time, but I just felt like I was running out of time every day. And so by the second week, I realized, okay, I understand it now. So this was lesson number 1 for me. I was viewing my calendar and my routine as something that stifled my freedom, when in fact, it is meant to be there to feel supportive of my freedom. So like, what do I mean by that? When I had nothing, no routine, nothing on my calendar, I just kind of drifted and then felt rushed because there's still things I wanted to do. But then when I actually took the time to think about, okay, what would feel the most supportive right now? And it made me think about, so this is where structure comes into play. It made me think about like, what are my non-negotiable activities of self-care? For me, that's going to the gym and lifting heavy ass weights. Okay, cool. There's that. Now that the weather's a lot better, I'm not sweating as soon as I get out of my apartment, walking in the evenings. That's important. There's things like, I don't know, grocery shopping, that's important. And then there's stuff like, well, I actually, have work to do. I would like to work. I would love to do this work that I love to do. And I just needed allocated time for that. So funny enough, by the time I got into my 3rd week or end of the 2nd week, when I sat down and thought about like, okay, what is my ideal schedule? What would it look like? It was pretty much exactly like what I had when I was in corporate. Now, part of that is conditioning because I've been doing it for years. True. So I'm not like super attached in that this is going to be what my schedule is going to look like forever. So keep that in mind. But the second is that it wasn't my calendar or the routine that was the problem, actually. It was how I felt. right? Because when I was in corporate, like I mentioned in a previous episode, I felt trapped. I had zero energy because I was doing things I just was not like, it just was not in alignment for me anymore. That had nothing to do with my calendar and routine. That had to do with my actions and what I was choosing to do at that time. Again, no shade towards past me, but that was the culprit. It wasn't my calendar routine, right? So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, well, that's great for an entrepreneur. They get to define their calendar. I beg to differ. I believe that you have more control over your calendar and your routine than you think. And if your immediate thought is, no, I don't, I'm trapped, well, then you're trapped. The first step is to say to yourself, I want my calendar and routine to feel supportive, not restrictive. The moment you decide that, your brain is going to give you ideas on how that might be. Maybe it's something simple like, you know what? I just need 5 minutes in between meetings because I have meeting after meeting after meeting. So maybe the thing to do is that when you schedule the meeting, you don't do it for a full hour, you do it for 55 minutes. Or when you're going to somebody else's meeting, you just say, hey, I have to drop at 5 minutes before because I have to prep. There are ways that you can create boundaries such that your calendar and your routine actually feel supportive to you. And try it out. Try it out for a month. And if it's not working, then reassess. But don't point just the calendar and the routine as the culprit for why you may be feeling trapped. It's a very disempowering place to be if you do that. Because if you do that, then you can't do anything to change it. So the second thing I learned, well, actually, it was a lesson I relearned because this is something that I was aware that I kind of struggled with even before I left corporate, but it's just made more obvious now that I work for myself, is separating your value as a person from your performance and deliverables. What I mean by that is, let's say that you have a project you're leading and you were supposed to have some sort of meeting for that project at a specific date, or maybe it's a series of meetings. If, say, for some reason nobody shows up, for some reason the meeting doesn't go through, the team didn't have enough time to do what it needed to, for whatever reason, do not see it as, oh, wow, I am a failure. Me, the person, I am a failure, right? I mean, it's not so great to also say, oh, my project is a failure. That's not exactly true either, but let's break it down. Let's start off at least by separating. Rather than saying, I am a failure, say, this project is a failure, right? Because at least there's separation there between the project and you. Now, is it true that the project is a failure? Probably not. But step one is to do that separation. So that's something that I relearned as an entrepreneur. And here's why. Because when I worked in corporate, even when I was leading a team or a project or whatnot, there was always an external metric set for me. So for example, the external metric could be this deliverable by this date, right? So then my job would be, what are the supporting meetings, documentation to meet that thing? And then I would make my own deadlines. Now, in corporate, even when I was in corporate, if I didn't meet the deadline and supporting documents that I said I needed by that date, I would get in my head, right? I'd be like, oh no, I have failed. I'm a failure. That's not good. And it's not true. And it doesn't make you feel good about yourself, right? At least though, when I was in corporate, I was able to say, oh, wait, that's not true because this is a deadline and a deliverable that I said was needed to support this thing that's further out. We can still make it because of the thing that's further out, right? So I was able to talk myself down. Now, here's the thing. So if you're a listener and you are a contractor or you work for yourself, it is even more important for you to separate your identity, your value as a person to like whatever project, whatever launch you were trying to do. Because this happened to me. There was a program launch, like the steps in between were going well, but then the actual launch itself, I didn't get the metrics that I desired. However, unlike in corporate, I didn't have like, say, a team lead or someone I can talk to give me the actual deliverable that it was supposed to go towards. Does that make sense? Because working for myself, I now am creating what the necessary deliverables are, what the necessary metrics are, that kind of thing. I'm going to tell you, I'll be real. I fell in a funk for a few days. I was just like, wow, I have failed. What did I do wrong? So lesson 2 was like, don't go there. Or if you do go there, just remember, I am valuable because I am. I have value because I am, period. Like whatever project, whatever thing you were trying to do, if it doesn't work out, that is not a reflection of your value as a person. Very important. Now, luckily, I do have support in terms of my own private coaching. Let me tell you, if you want to do something big, if you want to create, if you want to make a bold decision, bold pivot, something big, I highly, highly recommend having a support of some kind through a private coach, that kind of thing, because it is just, no matter how well trained you are. I have been a trained master life coach now for the past 4 years. I have been in multiple leadership positions. But no matter how trained you are, it's really hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in it. So highly recommend you have support. So anyway, that's lesson 2. Separate your value as a human from the value of whatever thing it is that you were hoping to accomplish. Okay. Number 3. When I was in corporate, I learned to hate meetings because there was just so many of them. If you looked at my calendar, it was fully booked. It got to the point that I had to block out time for work. It literally said block for work. So what happened was, after I left my corporate job, I was still seeing meetings that way. This is kind of similar to what I said about number 1. The meetings themselves are not the culprit, right? I mean, the first part of it is how I instinctively started to look at meetings as, ugh, like the moment I would open my calendar, this is even like post-corporate, I'd be like, ugh, it's a full day of meetings. Like, ugh, immediately my energy would go down. You have more control over this than you think. If you're thinking like, oh, but Laura, this is a standing meeting, it's corporate, I can't do anything. Well, again, like I said earlier, if you say you can't do anything and that your experience is forever going to be one that sucks, then that's going to be your experience. However, I invite you to challenge that belief. What if you can make a meeting more meaningful? What would that look like? The moment you challenge your brain to be like, how can I make this meeting more meaningful, instead of, ugh, this meeting sucks, before you even start it, your mind is going to come up with ideas. Maybe you structure your meeting a little bit differently. I remember, I will never forget this. There was a particular kind of meeting in engineering that was just, honestly, it's dry because it involves looking at a spreadsheet and going through line by line. And it was a necessary process. Now, sure, you look at that, you're like, ugh, how can you make that have more meaning, right? I have a coworker. What he did was that at the end of every meeting, he would share a fun fact, and it made it more meaningful. So stuff like that, like how can you reframe either your mindset, or if you're the one facilitating the meeting, how can you make it meaningful for you? Okay. The 4th lesson I learned, well, again, relearned, it's just that leaving corporate made me learn it real hard again, is that resting and taking a break is a vital part of the process. We live in corporate America, at least here where I'm recording, and productivity is king, right? Hustle mentality. We're do, go, go, go. So much so that, like, I bet I'm not the only one who has internalized the idea that if I am not actively working, then it is time wasted, that it is time that could have been used towards being quote unquote productive, right? I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. It's wrong. It's wrong. Like, you look at anything in nature, or even anything that we've created, like this laptop I'm currently recording, right? You have to charge it at some point. I can't just be using this laptop forever. It's going to die on me if I don't let it rest, right? Same is true for us. This is especially true for entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs, as I learned the hard way. When you feel, and we all know what this feels like, when you just feel your energy's low, or you're incredibly frustrated, or maybe something external in your life has happened, rather than push through, take the damn break. Maybe it's just a 5-minute break. Maybe take the fucking afternoon off. Don't care. Take the break. Why? Because You push through it and then what? Let's be honest, the work is going to be subpar compared to your usual self. It is. And it's going to take you longer to do. Take the break, rest. It sounds easy, but having just experienced this many times for like the past 4 weeks, there's a lot of rewiring that has to be done. So when you find yourself pushing through feelings of guilt, don't just be like, it's because I suck. I'm trying to rest and I just can't do it. Give yourself some compassion and maybe try some reframing statements. When you find yourself saying, oh my God, why do I do this? I know it's part of the process. I know I'm supposed to take a break, but there's something wrong with me. Let's reframe that, right? Because that also is not going to help. That's going to add to the angst. How about we say something like, wow, there I go again. There I go again, thinking that resting is not okay. Oops. And then reframe to resting, taking a break as part of the process. It's okay that I'm doing this. And if your mind goes there again, just be like, oh, there I go again. You can imagine like it's a part of you that's speaking, because we all are composed of these parts, right? You ever argue with yourself about something? We're all composed of parts. So if you find yourself feeling guilty for resting, feeling like you're letting the team down, that was my biggest thing. Think of it as a part. In fact, think of it as a younger part, like a child, right? Imagine you're talking to a child and the child's like, oh no, like everything's going to fail because I decided to take a 5-minute break. How would you talk to that child, right? You might say, hey, I know it seems like I have to work right now, and I have so much compassion for the angst that you're feeling. And I'm here to tell you that that's not how we're going to operate anymore, because now we understand that resting is actually really important. And when we rest, we can actually do a lot more. So maybe we won't start for another 5 minutes, but I promise you, when we feel rested, when we do start working, it's going to be so much faster and more efficient than if we had tried to push through. Something like that. So all this to say, yes, these are 4 lessons that I learned, or in some cases relearned, when I left corporate. But truthfully, these are lessons that you can do, you can hopefully start to implement, regardless of where you are in your career, regardless if you're thinking about a pivot or you're not. These are things that are important to keep in mind anyway. And I really believe that, yes, the external pivot of, oh my God, I left my corporate job after 18 years. That sounds really cool. It's like, oh yeah, that's sexy. Wow, that's crazy. But honestly, the hardest part of the pivot is the internal shift that happens first. So don't think that like, oh, I don't have any job prospects right now, or like, oh, I do want to leave corporate, but I don't even know like what my business is going to be. That's the external stuff. I promise you, shift the internal stuff first. More ideas going to come to you. More opportunities are going to come to you. Because truthfully, the pivot starts in here. It starts internally. The external will follow accordingly. And by the way, if you are waiting for the external pivot to happen first so that you internally feel better, I'm here to tell you I have done that. I have gotten the job that I thought was going to make me feel better, but I hadn't made the shift on the inside, and it doesn't work. So all that to say, I hope this was really helpful for you. I would love to hear which of these 4 lessons you already knew, which was new for you. Do you have any other lessons? Shoot me a DM on Instagram. My handle is @laura.m.dionisio. And hey, if you really loved this, I would love if you would subscribe, comment, follow, send this to your friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Sharing is caring. And remember, no matter where you are in your journey, proceed as if success is inevitable, because it is. I'll talk to you next time. All right, friend, that's it for today's drop. If this episode hits something deep, don't just sit with it. Act on it. Share this with a friend who needs to hear it, and then head to www.leadintact.com to grab your free heart-aligned career transition starter, or book a free 20-minute call with me. I'm here when you're ready to stop feeling stuck and start moving toward what you really want. Catch you next time.